Welcome back, and if this is your first time here, welcome. This channel exists for one reason only: to give women real, honest, research-informed conversations about what happens inside the female body, especially during and after menopause. No shame, no silence. No sugarcoating. If you've ever felt like your body suddenly became a stranger to you, if you've ever stood in front of the mirror after a sleepless night and barely recognized the face looking back at you, if you've ever been told, "This is just aging, get used to it," then you are exactly where you need to be. We talk about the things most doctors don't have time to explain, the biological truths most women only discover years too late, and the real possibilities that still exist for your body, no matter how long you've been struggling. So, before we dive in, if this kind of content speaks to you, go ahead and subscribe. Because what we're about to talk about today might genuinely change the way you understand your own body. And also, make sure you check the first pinned comment below this video. We've placed a link there to a product specifically designed to support women going through menopause, helping with hormonal balance, sleep quality, and vitality from the inside out. Thousands of women have already found it incredibly helpful, and I want to make sure you have access to it too. Now, let's get into it. The night it started, I remember standing in front of the bathroom mirror, wondering why my own face suddenly looked so unfamiliar to me. It wasn't just the wrinkles. It wasn't just the tiredness. It was something deeper than that. A heaviness behind the eyes. A quiet, unsettling feeling that something inside my body had changed without asking my permission. Without any warning. Without giving me any time to prepare. Every night became the same battle. I would finally fall asleep, sometimes after hours of lying awake with my mind racing, only to wake up an hour or two later burning from the inside out. Drenched in heat, heart pounding, sheets soaked, and a mind that refused to quiet back down no matter how hard I tried. By morning, I looked like I had aged years in a single night. And the worst part? I had no idea why. I assumed it was just menopause. I had been told it was just menopause. And I assumed, like so many women assume, that this was simply what getting older looked like for women. That the night sweats, the crushing fatigue, the dry and dull skin, the mood swings that came from nowhere, the growing lack of confidence, the face that kept changing in ways I didn't recognize. That all of this was just the inevitable price of being a woman past a certain age. For a long time, I accepted it. I smiled during the day. I pushed through. I told myself it wasn't that bad. But at night, alone in the dark, I knew the truth. Something wasn't right. And nobody around me seemed to have real answers. It wasn't until I started truly researching, not just Googling symptoms at 3 a.m., but actually diving into the science of what happens inside the female body after menopause, that I began to understand something that genuinely shocked me. Most women are never told that the hours before sleep may directly influence how their hormones behave throughout the night. That one sentence changed everything for me, because the female body doesn't simply turn off when we sleep. In fact, it's the opposite. The nighttime hours are among the most biologically active periods of the entire day. While we sleep, the body is working, constantly. It's regulating hormones, repairing tissue, managing inflammation, balancing the nervous system, restoring cellular function, and trying to bring the entire internal ecosystem back into equilibrium. The problem is that most women, especially after menopause, have developed habits, environments and routines that work directly against these natural processes. Not because they made bad choices, not because they failed in some way, but because nobody ever told them how powerfully the nighttime window influences hormonal health. Nobody explained the connection between evening stress levels and overnight cortisol surges. Nobody described how blood sugar instability in the late hours can trigger wakefulness and hot flashes. Nobody talked about how certain nutrients play a critical role in the hormonal signaling that happens while we sleep. And without that information, millions of women continue repeating the same nightly patterns, night after night after night, wondering why nothing ever seems to get better. The truth is, the body is not broken. The body is not giving up. The body is simply not receiving the signals it needs to do its job properly. And once I understood that, something inside me shifted. Let me explain what the research actually shows, because this is the part that genuinely fascinated me. The female body operates through invisible biological rhythms, cycles of restoration and regulation that run continuously beneath the surface of everything we do. These rhythms don't simply stop after menopause. They continue, they adapt. But they become more sensitive, more vulnerable to disruption, more dependent on the conditions we create around them. During deep sleep, the kind of sleep most women after menopause rarely experience anymore, the body engages in some of its most critical restorative processes. Cortisol levels are supposed to be at their lowest. Growth factors that support tissue maintenance begin their work. Inflammatory markers that accumulate throughout the day begin to reduce. The nervous system, which spends all day managing stress, finally gets the chance to reset. But when sleep becomes fragmented, broken up by hot flashes, racing thoughts, surges of heat and restlessness, the body never fully enters these deep recovery phases. It stays in a kind of suspended, half-alert state. The nervous system doesn't fully calm down. Cortisol doesn't drop the way it should. Inflammation lingers instead of resolving. And the cellular repair work that was supposed to happen doesn't happen completely. And this is where the visible signs of accelerated aging begin to make sense. When the body spends night after night in a state of incomplete recovery, the effects accumulate. The skin loses the collagen support it needs. The face begins to look more exhausted, not just because of tiredness, but because the biological processes that maintain skin structure and hydration are literally being interrupted on a cellular level. Metabolism becomes less efficient. Energy production at the cellular level slows. Mood regulation becomes unstable because the neurological rebalancing that happens during deep sleep isn't occurring properly. And slowly, almost invisibly, the woman looking back from the mirror becomes less and less recognizable. It's not age alone doing this. It's sleep deprivation, hormonal disruption, chronic inflammation, and the accumulated weight of a body that has been in recovery mode for months, sometimes years, without ever quite recovering. Once I began to understand this, I could finally see how all the different symptoms were connected. It's not random that women after menopause often experience so many issues at once. It's not coincidence that the night sweats come alongside the fatigue, alongside the skin changes, alongside the mood instability, alongside the weight gain, alongside the loss of confidence, alongside the feeling of simply not being yourself anymore. These symptoms are not separate problems. They are expressions of the same underlying imbalance. When nighttime recovery is repeatedly disrupted, the body's entire hormonal ecosystem begins to shift. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, becomes dysregulated, and cortisol influences almost everything else. It affects how the body manages inflammation. It affects how skin cells regenerate. It affects how fat is stored and metabolized. It affects the nervous system's ability to calm down. It affects mood, energy, libido, immune function, and cognitive clarity, all from chronic, unresolved nighttime disruption. You wake up tired. Your skin looks thinner and less radiant. Your face loses its natural brightness. Your body stores more fat, especially around the abdomen. Your energy collapses by midday. Your emotions feel harder to regulate. Your motivation disappears. And deep down, quietly, something that feels very much like your femininity begins to feel like it's slipping away. This is one of the most painful and least talked about aspects of menopause. Not just the physical symptoms, but the internal grief of feeling like you no longer recognize yourself, of feeling invisible, of wondering whether the vibrant, energetic, confident version of yourself is simply gone forever. But here's what I need you to hear. She is not gone. She is waiting for the conditions that will allow her to come back. What I began learning, through research, through conversations with specialists, and through the stories of women who had found their way back to feeling like themselves, was that the evening hours hold enormous, largely untapped power for hormonal recovery. Not the dramatic interventions, not the expensive treatments, not the extreme protocols. The simple, consistent, daily signals that we send the body in the hours before sleep. Because the nervous system is always listening, the endocrine system is always responding, and the biological rhythms that govern hormonal health are always adapting to the inputs we give them, for better or for worse. Here's what the research consistently points toward. Blood sugar stability in the evening matters enormously. When blood sugar spikes and crashes in the late hours, from late-night snacking on high-sugar foods, skipping meals, or eating too close to bedtime, it can trigger cortisol responses that disturb sleep architecture. Women after menopause are already more sensitive to blood sugar fluctuations because of reduced estrogen. Supporting stable blood glucose levels in the evening may reduce nighttime wakings and hot flash frequency. Stress exposure before bed directly impacts cortisol overnight. Scrolling through emotionally charged content, watching high-stimulation television, having stressful conversations late at night, mentally rehearsing worries. All of these activities signal the nervous system to remain alert, the opposite of what the body needs to transition into deep recovery sleep. Creating a deliberate buffer of lower stimulation before bed is not a luxury. For women after menopause, it may be one of the most important biological decisions of the day. Magnesium intake plays a role in muscle relaxation, nervous system calming, and sleep quality. Many women are chronically low in magnesium, and this deficiency becomes more impactful after menopause when the body is already more sensitive. Adequate magnesium intake, particularly in the evening, has been associated with improved sleep quality and reduced nighttime anxiety. Protein and specific nutrient intake support the hormonal building blocks the body needs overnight. The body uses sleep to synthesize and regulate hormones. But this process requires raw materials. Adequate protein throughout the day and the right micronutrients provide the foundation for the hormonal repair work that happens while we sleep. Temperature regulation affects the ability to enter and maintain deep sleep. Hot flashes are partially driven by the hypothalamus, the brain's temperature regulation center, becoming hypersensitive after menopause. Supporting a cooler sleep environment, wearing breathable fabrics, and using other temperature regulation strategies can reduce the frequency and intensity of nighttime heat surges. None of these are miracle solutions. None of them promise overnight transformation. But together, repeated consistently, they create the conditions the body has been asking for. One of the most profound things I've encountered in this research is the recognition by many specialists that menopause is not the end of the female body's responsiveness. It is a transition, a biological shift that makes the body more sensitive, not less capable, more sensitive to stress, more sensitive to poor sleep, more sensitive to nutritional gaps, more sensitive to chronic inflammation, but also more sensitive to the right signals, more responsive to genuine recovery, more capable of transformation when given what it actually needs. This is not wishful thinking. This is supported by how the female hormonal system actually operates. The body's endocrine glands, nervous system, immune system, and cellular repair mechanisms remain active and responsive throughout the entire lifespan. They don't simply stop working at menopause. They reorganize, they adapt, and they continue doing their best to maintain balance with whatever inputs they receive. When those inputs begin to change, when the nervous system finally gets the calm it needs, when blood sugar stops crashing at midnight, when deep sleep starts to return, even a little, the effects can be remarkably visible. Women describe waking up and noticing that their face looks calmer, less puffy, less drawn, less depleted. They describe having more energy by mid-morning, not the frantic coffee-driven urgency of someone running on cortisol, but genuine, quieter, more sustainable energy. They describe feeling more emotionally stable, less reactive, less on edge. And many describe something they struggle to put into words, a sense of recognition, of looking in the mirror and seeing themselves again. Not the same as they were at 30, not some impossible reversal of time, but themselves. Present, alive, recognizable. That's what real recovery looks like. Not erasing age, restoring vitality. I want to talk specifically about skin and facial aging for a moment, because this is something that affects so many women deeply, and the connection to nighttime hormonal disruption is more direct than most people realize. After menopause, estrogen levels drop significantly. Estrogen was one of the primary supporters of collagen production, skin hydration, and skin elasticity. Its decline is one of the reasons skin changes become so visible in the years following menopause. But the accelerated aging that many women experience isn't driven by estrogen loss alone. Chronic cortisol elevation, the kind that comes from ongoing poor sleep, nighttime stress activation, and incomplete recovery, directly breaks down collagen. Cortisol is catabolic. It breaks down tissue, and skin is highly vulnerable to this effect. Inflammation compounds this. Inflammatory processes, when chronically elevated, contribute to skin thinning, loss of firmness, increased sensitivity, and accelerated cellular aging. The body's ability to produce natural anti-inflammatory responses becomes compromised when sleep is consistently disrupted. And here's the part that many women find most hopeful when they first hear it. When cortisol begins to regulate, when inflammation begins to reduce, when deep sleep starts to return consistently, the skin responds, not because anything magical happened on the surface, but because the internal biological environment that supports skin health began to recover. Women who improve their nighttime hormonal recovery often describe visible changes in their skin tone, hydration, and overall brightness, not from new products, but from giving the body the conditions it needed to do its own repair work properly. This is why so many women describe the transformation as going far beyond skin. When the body is finally resting deeply, restoring properly, and operating with less chronic internal overload, the whole person looks different, carries herself differently, feels different from the inside. I want to acknowledge something that doesn't get talked about enough. Most women suffer through menopause quietly. They don't talk about the sleepless nights. They don't mention the hot flashes that wake them up 3, 4, 5 times before morning. They don't describe the exhaustion that goes so deep it starts to feel like a personality trait instead of a symptom. They don't admit how much it affects their relationships, their work, their sense of self. They smile, they push through, they minimize it when someone asks how they're doing. Because there is still, in so many circles, a cultural expectation that women should simply endure these changes without complaint. That aging gracefully means accepting everything quietly. That asking for support or information is somehow excessive. This is wrong. What is happening inside the female body after menopause is real. The hormonal shifts are real. The disrupted sleep is real. The accelerated inflammatory processes are real. The emotional and psychological weight of feeling like your body has betrayed you is real. And you deserve actual information, actual support, and actual options. Not dismissal. Not the vague assurance that everyone goes through this. Not the subtle implication that you should simply accept looking and feeling worse as the natural order of things. You deserve to understand what is happening in your body. And you deserve access to the tools, practices, and resources that can genuinely help. That is exactly why we've placed a link in the first pinned comment below this video. It leads to a product specifically formulated to support women navigating menopause, designed to help with hormonal balance, sleep quality, inflammation, and the overall vitality that so many women feel they've lost. It's one of the most thoughtful resources we've come across for women at this stage of life, and we want to make sure it's within easy reach. Check the first pinned comment right now and take a look. Let me be clear about something important. Recovery after menopause is not about returning to your 20s. It's not about chasing some impossible version of youth that no longer exists. It's not about fighting your age or pretending the transition didn't happen. It's about restoring the conditions that allow the body to function at its best, at whatever age, at whatever stage. It's about sleep that actually restores. Energy that comes from genuine cellular recovery instead of cortisol and caffeine. Skin that reflects what's happening internally, which is calm, supported, adequately nourished. Emotional stability that comes from a nervous system that gets the rest it needs. Confidence that returns not because everything is perfect, but because the body finally feels like a safe place to live again. This is what women describe when they talk about finally feeling like themselves after years of struggling. It's not a before and after photo. It's the quiet, profound experience of waking up and feeling present in your own body again. And the pathway there is not as complicated as the supplement industry or the anti-aging market wants you to believe. It begins with understanding. With recognizing the biological reality of what is happening in your body and why. With identifying the specific habits and conditions that may be working against your overnight recovery. And with making deliberate, consistent changes that support the body's own natural capacity for restoration. The most consistent finding across everything I've studied about menopause, sleep, and hormonal recovery is this. Small changes, repeated consistently, create the biggest transformations. Not dramatic interventions, not extreme protocols, not the complete overhaul of every habit at once. The women who describe the most meaningful recoveries are almost always the ones who made targeted, deliberate adjustments, and then stayed consistent with them long enough for the body to actually respond. A calmer, more intentional wind-down before bed. Reduced screen exposure in the evening. A nutritional approach that supports blood sugar stability overnight. Specific nutrient support for the hormonal processes that happen while sleeping. A cooler, more comfortable sleep environment. A consistent sleep and wake schedule that supports circadian rhythms. Stress processing strategies that allow the nervous system to deactivate before bed. These are not luxuries. They are not vague wellness suggestions. They are direct biological inputs. And the female body responds to biological inputs constantly, regardless of age. That's the part I most want you to take with you from everything we've talked about today. Your body is still responding, still adapting, still capable of more recovery than most of what you've been told would lead you to believe. Menopause is not the end of hormonal life. It's a new chapter, one that requires different knowledge, different habits, and different kinds of support. But it is absolutely not a sentence of inevitable decline. I want to close with something simple and direct. If you've been struggling with sleepless nights, night sweats, exhaustion, skin that seems to be aging faster than it should, mood swings you can't control, or just a general feeling that the woman you used to be is somehow out of reach, please don't accept that as your permanent reality. The body you are living in right now is still biologically active, still hormonally responsive, still capable of real, meaningful recovery when given the right conditions and the right support. You are not too far along. You are not too old. You have not missed your window. The window for biological restoration remains open far longer than most of us have been told. And it begins, in a very real and scientifically meaningful way, tonight. With the conditions you create before you sleep. With the signals you send your nervous system, with the nutritional support you give your hormonal processes, with the quiet, consistent decision to stop fighting your body and start working with it. That is where the real transformation begins. Don't forget to check the first pinned comment below. The link there connects you to a product that has genuinely helped thousands of women at exactly this stage of life, supporting hormonal balance, sleep restoration, and a return to vitality from the inside out. We believe in it enough to put it first. Take a look. And if this video gave you something real to think about, please share it with a woman in your life who might need to hear it. Because too many women are going through this alone, in silence. when the information and the support they need is right here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking your health seriously, and we'll see you in the next one.